Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of the I Don't Give a Care podcast. If you're new here, my name's Jessie, and I'm so happy you're here with me this week. This week, we're going to be talking about a little bit of a heavier episode. It's going to be about how grief is goddamn lonely. And if you've experienced any form of grief, if you've suffered from a tragic loss of any sort, then you would know that it is so lonely and it is hard to feel understood by people. And specifically, we're talking about the death of a loved one, the grief from that, because I hear the word grief all the time. Grief from heartbreak, grief from losing a job, grief from a lot of things. And that's valid, but I'm talking specifically about a loss from the death of a loved one. And it is one of the most loneliest feelings in the world. It is one of the most loneliest lifelong feelings that you have to live with. What it feels like when you're going through grief, it feels like you're drowning. And it feels like you can't catch up. It feels like you take 5 steps forward and then you get pushed 10 steps back. And when you're in the shock of everything too, still getting used to your new reality, it feels like a really bad dream that you can't wake up from. I said this before in the first episode when I talked about my loss of my brother. Losing a loved one ultimately creates a version of you from before and a version of you after who experiences the world in like a completely different way than you did before. It becomes very lonely not knowing who you are and kind of what your life looks like now, because this is your new life and you have to get used to it. Everything you once knew is gone out the window. Say goodbye to that life because it's gone. And it transforms everything you thought you knew about your life. It transforms the way you view your life. It transforms all the plans you had for your life and also every single one of your relationships, especially the relationship with yourself. And even if you haven't experienced a significant death of a loved one that completely altered your life in the way that it has, like for mine, I just really hope you stay anyways for this conversation, because I really think it's so important that we talk more about how grief affects people, because all of us, every single one of us will know someone that will go through a tragic loss, or we ourselves will go through a tragic loss in our lives. So it's so important that we talk more and have more of these conversations about grief and death and significant losses, because we all go through this, and it is so important that we just talk about it so we know how to support each other going forward and to know what other people are going through. Unfortunately, I do think you kind of have to go through a tragic loss or experience it for yourself in order to really understand what someone is experiencing. And I'm specifically talking about losses that aren't expected. I'm not talking about people passing away from old age or grandparents passing away from old age, even though that is, of course, valid to feel grief for grandparents passing away. I'm not saying that at all, but it is definitely very different than when someone dies way before their time and doesn't get to grow old. I do think you have to kind of experience it for yourself to truly understand what it feels like to go through a tragic loss and feel that grief. But I don't think it has to be that way. Before my brother died, I remember knowing a few families and people that I knew that have gone through horrible losses. And looking back, I wish I would have been able to support them more. I just wish I supported them more. And some of these people I wasn't very close with, but I still thought about them all the time. I still wondered, like, how are they doing? I still remember details about the death of their loved ones, but I would never reach out to them. I would never say anything because I thought they didn't want to hear from people. I thought they didn't want to be reminded about their grief, about their loss. Of course, everybody's experience is different about what they want, but I'll tell you right now, a lot of people love hearing about their person and talking about their grief. I also had a few friends when I was younger who I'm not very close with anymore, but they had lost parents at a very young age. And I wish I asked them more questions about what that was like for them, what their parent was like, if they remember them, and just like how they felt and how life was for them. But I never did ask those questions. I just thought it was a touchy subject. So that was off limits, don't go there. But that is so far from the truth. I also remember looking at these families that have gone through these tragic events and just looking at my family and thinking, wow, we're so lucky to have not gone through such a tragic event. And just wondering to myself, I wonder if that will happen to us. Like, I remember thinking to myself, I was like, no, that can't happen to us. Like, everything's just going so good right now. Like, I just couldn't fathom that happening in our family. And then that same year, my brother died out of the blue, right after having his child, who was only 7 weeks old. And it was literally like watching a movie of my life. Like, it didn't feel like my life. I was like, this doesn't happen to me. This happens to other people. I know that sounds fucked up to say, but genuinely, we all think it. We're all like, no, that can't happen to my family. That won't happen to me. Those kind of tragedies only happen to other people. They only happen in movies. But that's so far from the truth, and it happened to my family. Happened to me. And it can happen to anyone. None of us are immune from tragedy, from death. Like, we're all going to die. Everybody we love is going to die. And that is so hard to hear, but once you accept it, it gets a lot easier. And it gets a lot easier to be there for other people too that are going through it as well. And someday you're going to need that support that those people need right now. I just think as a society, we could all have a little more empathy, be more understanding, ask more questions, show more support, and just show up more in general. And if you are somebody that's already experienced a tragic loss or a death of a loved one, just know that I see you and I feel you. And although I don't know exactly what your loss has been like for you and how your grief journey has been, just know I can relate to you in some way. And I'm so sorry that you've had to go through such a tragic loss. I'm also sorry if you feel lonely in your grief journey and just lonely in life. And if you feel like no one understands you, just know I'm right there with you. And there's more of us out there than you think. It truly is unfair that we have to go through death and loss, but it's part of being a human, unfortunately. So if you've been through the death of a loved one, you would know that when it first happens, a lot of people, an overwhelming amount of people will be reaching out to you, and they'll be saying the same things over and over again. They'll be saying, I'm sorry for your loss. They'll be saying, I'm here if you need anything. Let me know if you need anything. And then all of a sudden it's crickets. It's like, where did everyone go? I thought you were here if I need anything. But people don't really mean that. They're just saying that because they feel bad for you and they literally don't know what else to say. So yeah, at first it's very overwhelming. You have so many people reaching out. You think everybody cares, is going to be there for you. They're all telling you, oh, I'm here if you need me. Literally anything, let me know. And the problem with people doing this, it puts the responsibility on the grieving person. So the person that just had this big tragic loss, whose life got flipped upside down and their whole reality has changed, it puts this responsibility on them to reach out to people and ask for help when they cannot do that. They can't even show up for themselves, let alone show up for other people and reach out and ask for what they need. They can't do that. They're not in the right state of mind. All they want to do is just bury away in a hole. They don't even want to get these messages from people. They don't even want to acknowledge this loss. They're in shock. It's too much. So when people say please reach out, it's really overwhelming because that just doesn't happen. And it's hard because people obviously don't want to be overbearing when someone's going through a loss. They want to give them some time to themselves and their family, and I totally get that. But at some point, I do feel like you need to check up on people because I'm telling you right now, they are not going to reach out. They just won't. They're not going to reach out because, well, first of all, they think people don't want to hear about their grief. In reality, grievers don't have the capacity to be a good friend. They don't have the capacity to just show up, to reach out to people and do anything except for survive. Something you'll hear about a lot in people's grief journeys is this idea of second losses. So after you have your first initial loss of the death of your loved one comes a bunch of secondary losses. Not just the person that died, but also, like I said, yourself. You lose a shit ton of friends. You lose the family you once had. You lose the version of everybody in your life that you had before. You lose so many different people in the process of going through this loss. And what I've realized is that grief doesn't just take the person that died. It doesn't just take them away, but it also exposes who stays. It shows you who's going to show up and stay there when you really need them, when you're at your lowest point in your life. For me, I noticed this when people just stopped reaching out, people stopped checking in, stopped asking questions, and some people didn't even reach out at all that I thought would, which was really heartbreaking. But after that, I was like, yeah, your true colors showed. And a lot of people just didn't know what to say. And I think a lot of people think that saying nothing at all is better than saying the wrong thing, just show up. Just say something. Like, it's really not that hard. It takes 5 seconds out of your day. And also to check up on people, it takes 5 seconds. Grievers just need people to show up. That's it. And they know you have your own life going on too, and that their loss isn't the center of your world, even though it feels like it's the center of the entire world. They know that, but in the first few days, weeks, months of loss, it takes over their entire world. So it's kind of hard for people who have gone through a loss to just accept that it's nobody else's entire reality like it is for them. It's hard for them to accept that it hasn't completely crumbled anybody else's world. And I will say that going through the loss of a loved one and experiencing death is truly the real test of all time of relationships and friendships, because relationships aren't always 50-50. They're just not. They're not always equal. Sometimes people are going through things where they can't fully show up, and then other times it's the other way around. Sometimes you do have to show up a little bit extra in hard times for people when they can't give that back to you in return. And that's part of unconditionally loving someone and realizing that relationships, they shouldn't feel transactional. You're not always going to get the same effort that you give out to somebody, especially if they're going through such a big loss and something so tragic. I also found in the recent months of my brother's death was like people seem to forget pretty early on. It was like, okay, a month has passed. People expected me to just be okay. And that's crazy. Think about your family and somebody just died. Would you be able to go back to normal in 1 month? No, you would not. You'll never go back to normal. But so that's why I found it crazy that people just kind of seem to forget. And I was like, it feels like it just happened. It feels like it just happened. And after 1 month, people were already like talking again to me like normal. I found that I had to like remind people that my brother died because people weren't asking me about him anymore or asking me how I was doing or how my family was doing, because a lot of shit happened at the time my brother died. We also moved from my childhood home of like 10 years. We moved and like it was just a lot. It was a lot at the time. Like we were moving, my brother just died, all these things. So the month kind of flew by quickly, but even then I was like, it feels like it just happened and everybody seems to have just moved on already. I found that people wouldn't remember it or even acknowledge it. And I was like, why are you acting like this didn't happen? Like as if it's not my entire world right now. I also noticed people avoided like saying his name to me, which really sucked because it's like, what, so he died and now he just doesn't get to exist anymore? Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm going to have to tiptoe around saying his name all the time for the rest of my life? Like, I never get to talk about my brother again? Like, before he died, I would literally talk about him all the time. I would brag about him because he was just so funny. And, like, we honestly didn't see each other that much, but he was still my fucking brother. I still was so proud of him and thought he was the coolest person alive. And I would just talk about him, like, here and there. And now I couldn't even do that because then it was like, oh, like, people were sad for me. And yes, it was sad, but I also needed to talk about him. Like, I couldn't just let his name die with him. I couldn't let his memory die with him. The thing that people don't understand about losing a loved one is that their loved ones who are alive, the grievers, are the ones who keep their memory alive by sharing their memories, doing the things that they did. That's how they stay alive, so that they don't just die along with their body, so that they're not gone forever. And with that, I felt like I had to kind of post about it a lot. It was also healing and like therapeutic in a way and kind of like an outlet for me during my early like stages of grief. And I will still post about my grief, but not as much as I did at the beginning. But I felt like I had to post something to kind of remind people like yeah, I'm still grieving. Like this just happened. Like help. Literally, it was like me screaming help. It just felt wrong to me that people were forgetting and they didn't have to live with this like I did. So I would post about him and post about my grief so people would remember and so that I could still talk about him. And I literally just wanted to shout it on every single rooftop. Hey guys, remember my brother died. Like, I'm not okay. I think a lot of people think like, oh, I don't want to remind them or I don't want to bring it up and upset them. It's like, you can't upset me any more than I already am because it's already on my mind 24/7. I don't think people realize that. Like, it's not like you're reminding me. It's like literally my entire universe, especially in the early days of when the loss had just happened. It was my entire life and my family's life. Like, what do you mean remind me? Like, I'm living it. Like, this is my life all the time. I'm sorry. I realize I say like a lot, so I'm sorry. You can't upset me any further because I already had the worst experience in my entire life watching him die, and nothing will ever top that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think people realize that. And because of people being too careful about what they would say and just not acknowledging what happened and bringing it up and asking me questions, I felt like people were tiptoeing around me and kind of like ghosting me in a way because it's like they didn't want to deal with that. I don't blame people because nobody wants to be in the position where you say the wrong thing to somebody, even though you have good intentions. But I think the key part here is asking those questions to someone and just checking in on them. Hey, do you want to talk about this? How are you feeling? And just seeing how they react and how they're doing. I think just knowing somebody cares and is reaching out and checking on you is more than enough. Just seeing if they're okay to talk about the person, because most of the time people do want to talk about them. Everybody's grief journey and how they handle grief and their tragic loss is completely different from one another. So some people might not want to talk about the person that they lost and kind of their whole experience because maybe it was very traumatizing. Some other people are okay with talking about it and want to talk about it and need to talk about it. Ask those questions and see. And I feel like because people were tiptoeing around me, they also were taking like my grief, my anger, my sadness, my pain all personally. It had nothing to do with them. It was just my life. Like, it was the loss, it was the grief, it was everything. And I found that some people would make it about themselves if they didn't hear from me or if I just kind of isolated myself. I think that's a thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you're going through this, all you want to do is isolate and just hide away from the world. And people that are grieving, they do this because nobody really understands them. Like, nobody truly understands them and what they're going through. And everybody's grief journey is unique and completely different. So, of course, nobody is going to understand them. And what I was just talking about is a lot of people take your grief personally and they make it about themselves. And I find that grief and talking about grief and your loss and everything makes people so uncomfortable. And they make it about themselves rather than realizing like, hey, this person feels this way 24/7. I'm just getting a glimpse into what they're feeling like and it's making me uncomfortable. Think of how they feel. They're uncomfortable all the fucking time and have to live with it. You're just getting a little sliver of what that feels like. But a lot of people don't want to feel that because it's uncomfortable and they think, oh my God, it's contagious. It's going to happen to my family. It's too depressing. That's how people think. And it's sad because like grievers become so lonely and you wonder why they isolate themselves because of how people react to their grief and talking about the person they lost and just how they treat them. Not only did I notice that people don't like when you're sad and grieving, they just don't. People find you depressing to be around. People act like it's contagious, like they're going to catch your sadness. Some people just don't have the capacity to witness your grief and the new you, the new version of you, because grief changes you so much. This also goes to say that a lot of people have gone through losses themselves, and maybe it's too much for them to witness somebody else going through a loss as well. Maybe it's triggering for them and it's uncomfortable for them. And maybe they haven't gone through anything like that and it's just still uncomfortable to them and they don't want to have that energy in their life. But that's what comes with friendship and relationships is people go through hard times and it's important for us to be a community and show up for people that go through those hard times and not feel so uncomfortable around it and make it more normalized because these are all experiences that we all go through or will go through at some point in our lives. It's important that we get a little more comfortable with talking about it and just being there for people and kind of just having the capacity to hold that for other people, even though it is really hard. And I totally get it because I've seen the people in my life change because of grief and just witnessing their grief. And even though we both lost the same person, it makes me uncomfortable too, to see someone grieving and not knowing the right thing to say and just how to be there for them and how to make them feel better. But sometimes people just really need someone to be there for them and just know that they're there. They don't need you to say the right thing or give them the perfect advice. They just need you to be there, to let them know that you're there and you're not going anywhere. Another reason why people isolate themselves is because it makes you really jealous and resentful of other people's lives. And it's a hard thing to admit, but it's the truth. When my loss happened, I was comparing my life to every single person's around me. I was like, why do they get to live a happy, normal life and have their happy family? Why do they get to have all of their siblings? Why me? Why not them? What did I do to deserve this? When there's other worse people out there? All of those questions in my mind. And then don't even get me started on social media when it came around to the first Christmas and holidays and Thanksgiving, because actually his death happened right before Thanksgiving because it was in October. So like about a week or two after, I think, I was just seeing everybody celebrating Thanksgiving with their big, happy families. And I saw people I knew, I saw friends, and I was just so mad. Like, I had to get off social media for a while, which was probably the best thing. But you start to compare your life to everybody else's, you get really jealous, and you get very resentful. And another reason why I had to isolate myself was because when I did see people or talk to people and I would hear them complaining about their lives or their families or their siblings, whatever it is, I would get so mad because I was like, you have no idea how lucky you are. Even though some of their problems have probably been valid, but I was just like, I could not listen to it. Like, just everybody else's problems seems so small compared to the reality I was living in, where my life was flipped upside down. My brother died. My family was completely different. I felt like I had nobody. I felt so lonely. And then I hear people complaining about the smallest things that really did not matter. And I was like, I cannot listen to this because I'm going to freak out. I'm going to freak out. And I was just like, oh my God, put your life into perspective. And it was also hard because obviously I wanted to be happy for the people I still had in my life. But I was just so unhappy and devastated and angry at the world that I could not be happy for other people. And that is not a good place to be if you want to be a good friend or have a healthy relationship with anyone, because the number one thing to have a healthy relationship with anyone or a healthy friendship is to be able to be happy for them. But I could not do that. I could not do that. I could not hold that space to be happy for other people because I was just so miserable. And it feels so impossible when your world is crumbling apart and other people's worlds just seem to keep getting better while yours just keeps crumbling apart. And it's like, why? And I just want to say, if you have been through a loss and you're grieving as well, it doesn't make us bad people for feeling this way. It actually makes us human. And all these feelings are completely normal. Just try not to take it out on the people that are still there for you. Just let them know, like, I'm sorry, I can't be in the right mindset right now to be there for you or be a good friend for you. If they're truly an important person in your life or a real friend, they'll have that patience, they'll understand you, and they'll give you the time that you need because you will come back around. I promise you. It will take time and it will take healing, but you'll come back around. And you'll look a little different than you did before. You'll be a completely different person than you were before. But the real people that love you in your life will accept that new version of you and they'll be patient with you and understand. I also want to talk about how grief is just so lonely because life just goes on. I talked about earlier how after a month, like, it felt like people already had forgotten about my loss and just what I was going through. And I felt like I had to remind people. But most people, yeah, when you lose someone, you have to go back to work. The bills have to be paid. And most workplaces, too, only give you like a few days for bereavement or the death of a loved one. A lot of places don't give you days off for grief. And when you lose someone, it's like, okay, 3 days are up, your grieving's over, time to get back to work. That's how it is. So a lot of people have to also take a financial loss. You have so many expenses that come up too, that come with a death. So it's just a very stressful time. You have paperwork, there's funerals, there's so many things to figure out, so many things to pay for. Like, it's actually disgusting that our world has decided to capitalize off people's deaths. Like, even in your death, you aren't free from paying bills because they're just passed on to your loved ones who are not only grieving, but now have to pay for your death. And it's just disgusting. Like, I hate it. Like, if you've ever looked into how much it costs for cremation, for a coffin, for burial services, for celebrations, it's thousands of dollars. It's just disgusting. I was getting a little bit off track there, but It was just my point, basically saying like life goes on. Not only did you just suffer a horrible, tragic loss of someone that you love, now you have to go back to work. Now you have to worry about paying the bills. Now you have to worry about paying for the expenses that come with their death. And then, not to mention, like, holidays keep coming, birthdays keep coming, celebrations keep coming, even if you want no part of any of this because you're in such a low place and you feel so miserable and you can't even fathom just celebrating a holiday or somebody's birthday, anything like that. It's like, I can't even think about that right now. But people have these expectations that you need to get over a loss quickly so that you can show up again for them, so that you can show up to Thanksgiving and Christmas and this person's birthday and celebrate this and that. But that's not how that works. You're going to have to give these people time and let them sit in their grief for a little bit before they even think about showing up to the celebration or a holiday or your birthday. Because I'm telling you right now, they do not give a shit. I'm sorry. A person they love just died. And that's all they fucking care about. That's all that's on their mind. So please lower your expectations when it comes to expecting grievers to just show up for you when they can't. They can't even show up for themselves. They expect you to just show up with a big smile on your face as if your world didn't crumble apart. I feel like people don't realize when life just moves on so quickly and the world just moves on, and going to these celebrations and going to these birthdays and holidays, that everything is a trigger, a reminder of the loss. It's a reminder that your person doesn't get to live to have another birthday. They don't get to be at another one of your Christmases with you. We don't get to celebrate any big milestone again in the future. They won't be at my wedding. They won't be there to see my kids. Yeah, it's just really hard because life just goes on. It's very eerie and scary how fast it does, but it just does. A big reason I think that life just goes on is because our society doesn't hold enough space for death and for grievers and for loss. A lot of people just want to look the other way because it's so uncomfortable. Grief makes people uncomfortable, and so they expect you to just move on with your life. But there needs to be more conversations, there needs to be more resources, and there needs to be more support for people that are going through losses and are grieving. Because it is incredibly fucking difficult for people who are just simply trying to survive another day. Something else I want to touch on, which is a huge reason why grief is so goddamn lonely, is because it changes all of your relationships in your life. Not only do you lose the person who died, you also lose every single relationship in your life because they all change, every single relationship. And I've realized that grief can either bring people closer together or it can bring them further apart. And in my family's case, it's done both. And people always say grief comes in waves. And I think that's true, especially for the dynamics of your family and your relationships in your family. There was periods where we got super close and we were all just bonding over this because we were like, we all have to stick together because we lost my brother. So we were all like, we all have to stick together. We have to stay close. And then there was other periods where we would all isolate from each other. Like, it goes through waves. And it totally depends on your loss and your family as well. How strong was your family before? And the hard part for my family was that my brother was pretty much the glue. He was pretty much the glue in our family, and he brought everyone together. He knew how to have a good time. He was always the life of the party. We can definitely feel his absence at every single holiday now, because he was the loudest one, no doubt. He was the loudest one. He was the most fun. He just made everybody have a good time. So now you just feel that emptiness without him there. Our whole family feels it, and it's fucking horrible. But that's how the dynamics change. Like, your family dynamics just change because the glue that once held us all together is now gone. He's not physically here. Even though we can all feel him spiritually and he sends us signs all the time that he's here with us, it's just not the same as having him here in person and hearing his voice and having his big laugh and seeing his smile and his big hair. It's just not the same having him physically here with us. Not only is he now missing from all of our family holidays and just everything we do and just from our family as a whole, I'm now the oldest sibling. Technically, like, I'm the oldest sibling now, so now it feels like a lot more pressure and like responsibility has kind of been put onto me. It's just hard because I always thought I was going to have my older brother as my protector, who protected me and my younger sister. I always thought he was going to be there. I thought we were all going to be there until the end through funerals of our family when we're older. I always thought he was going to be there during me and my sister's weddings and get to be best friends with who we marry and bully them. And now my brother will never meet my boyfriend Nick. I knew they would have loved each other and I knew they would have been really good friends and have become brothers. But that will never happen now. And I just think of how different things could be and how different our family dynamic could be had he still been here. He'll never get to meet my kids when I have them. I'll never get to see if he had more kids. Just all the things that you thought you were going to do with the loved one that you lost won't happen. It just changes everything. It changes every family dynamic you have. And like I said before, you don't just lose the person, you lose everybody, every relationship. And that's true because my mom and my sister are completely different, just like I am, since my brother died. And it completely changed all of our relationships with each other because our glue is no longer here. And it just changes how everybody is and how we go through life now. And it definitely put a strain in all of our relationships and how we show up for each other and the patience we have with each other and just everything. Everything is so different now. And honestly, it feels like I lost both of my siblings, and it's been really hard because at first it brought us really close to each other, and now I just feel like with the added stress of life and the death of our brother, going through a loss at such a young age and also experiencing our loss in different ways, it's kind of pushed us away from each other. And it's just so hard because I don't think anybody realizes how hard it is to basically lose both of your siblings in the span of only a few years. And I know I didn't technically lose both of my siblings, but it feels like I did. And I don't think anybody will understand that unless they go through it themselves. But if you know, you know. It's just incredibly fucking lonely. So yeah, it's definitely one of the harder parts of grief that not a lot of people talk about, especially if it's a death within your family. It completely changes your family dynamics. It tests all your relationships. You don't show up for each other the way that you used to. And I realize it's because everybody handles their grief differently. And everyone who lost Ryan, my brother, experienced a different loss. We all had our own unique relationship with him and in turn experienced different grief from each other. So I lost my older brother and my sister lost her older brother as well, but we both had different relationships with him. My mom lost her firstborn child and her only son. Ryan's dad, we had separate dads. He lost his first and only child. Ryan's girlfriend, Milena, lost the person she thought she was going to marry. And Lowen lost his dad. He doesn't get to grow up with a dad now. We all have different losses and they're all so unique in their own ways. We've all experienced different versions of loss and grief. So it's really hard to navigate through our grief together and grief with other people in your life when you're all experiencing different grief journeys. We're all on our own grief journey. Grief comes in many shapes and forms, and people say not to compare grief, but I do think there are different levels to grief. Like I said before, it's different losing someone that died of old age, like a grandparent, than it is losing someone that died way too young. Just like losing a child is very different from losing a sibling. They're all very different and it's hard to measure them. But at the end of the day, we're all grieving a loss. And I do know what losing a sibling is like. And unfortunately, it's one of the more less talked about losses out there. If you've lost a sibling, you would probably know that they're known as the forgotten grievers. When there's a loss in a family, people always ask, how are the parents doing? How's your mom doing? How's your dad doing? Not how you're doing if you lost your sibling. A lot of people want you to check up on your parents and be there for them. And you kind of have to step into this new role of almost being like a parent and growing up really fast to be there for your parents and to be there for your other siblings. And it's very stressful and it's a lot. And a lot of people just forget about sibling grievers because, yeah, they're the forgotten grievers. But I think a lot of people don't realize is that your siblings are the ones that you know from birth until you're older. You're supposed to grow old with them in death, and you both live the same childhood. You have the same childhood with them. They're your first best friends. They're your first given best friends. They know everything about your family and all the inside jokes you guys have. You spend all your holidays with them. And I don't feel like sibling grievers get enough. I don't think they get enough credit for how painful the loss is. And the only other person in the whole entire world that can understand my grief would be my sister, because we both lost a sibling. We both lost our older brother, and we both lost Ryan, but at the same time, we still experienced our grief in different ways. And you'll notice this if you are in a family that's grieving. Some people might get super inspired. Some people might get super motivated. They might keep really busy and start becoming obsessed with working out or doing all of these things in their life. And then you, on the other hand, you're depressed in your room, crying all the time. And maybe another person is completely numb and they don't want to talk about their grief and their loss at all. While another person, they won't stop talking about it. Everybody handles it differently. And that's what's hard about it. Everybody handles it differently because we're all going through our own unique grief experience. No one's grief journey is like the other person's. So that's something you have to realize if you're trying to support someone that's grieving, because they will be handling it different than somebody else that you know that maybe is going through grief. And even if you do find some people to relate to, their grief story is going to be completely different than yours. Like I said, even my own family members who experience losing the same person, we all have completely different grief journeys. And I joined a grief group actually a year and a half ago, and I met so many different people who had their own tragic losses. And it was definitely hard listening to their losses, because in your mind, it feels like your loss and your person is the greatest loss of all time and the only loss that matters. But in their mind, that's the same for their person. So yeah, I just found it hard to listen to other people's losses when yours feels the most tragic to you, but everybody has their own completely unique loss. It just makes you compare your loss to everybody else's, asking those questions on, oh, whose loss was more tragic and who's suffering the most and who's grieving the most. And those are just things that you cannot answer. You can't really measure or compare grief. So what I've learned about how lonely grief is and what I've learned through my grief experience so far is that you can't expect people to show up and save you, and you can't expect them to fix you, but having supportive people in your life and having people that just show up and check up on you really does make a difference. And I will say that if you do want to support someone through a loss, just keep checking up on them. Ask them about their person. Ask them if they want to talk about them or not. If you give them the space where you're just listening and not making it about you and let them talk, you'll be surprised at what you hear. Maybe they'll open up to you about it, and maybe they won't stop talking about it. Just give them that space to be someone to just listen and be there without feeling like you need to give them advice or have an answer to fix everything, because the truth is you can't fix anything. You can't bring their person back. And that's the only thing that would fix anything, is bringing their person back and not having them go through this tragic loss. But that is just not possible. So the only thing you really can do is just be there and show up for them. Some other things you can do are just do things to make their life easier. So instead of asking them, what can I do for you? And telling them to reach out to you if they need anything, because that's not really helpful, because they just want to isolate and they don't want to have that responsibility of reaching out to you. Cook them their favorite meal. Get them a book about loss. Make them a sentimental gift that involves the person that they lost. Getting a picture of them and their person printed. Maybe a little keychain. I had somebody once make me cute little shot glasses that said Sharpie shots on them. Those were really sweet, and I still have them and I'll never forget it. Recently, I had my best friend give me a little cardinal with a little written saying, because cardinals are a sign of a loved one that died being near. So that was really sweet. Little things where you show that you're thinking about them and that you're there for them. Like I said, doing things to make their life easier, because a lot of these people, they won't be taking care of themselves, especially in the early stages of their grief. They might not be eating properly. They might not be taking care of themselves. So anything to help ease that burden, just dropping off food, bringing them coffee, letting them know you're there for them, and just giving them that space to kind of just sit in their grief and just isolate, but also still being there for them and letting them know you're there and you're not going anywhere. It does so much to help someone. Don't be afraid to ask them about their person, say their name, ask them questions, bring them up. It was kind of hurtful when it felt like people didn't want to talk about them, or if I bring up my brother, people just like would change the subject or they wouldn't ask questions. And I was just like, oh my God, like, is this what life is going to be like from now on? Like, I can just never talk about my brother again? So don't do that to someone, especially if they're bringing up their person to you. That means they feel like you're a safe space to talk about their loved one. So don't make them feel uncomfortable. Don't let it make you feel uncomfortable either, because at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about you being there to support someone that's grieving and has just gone through a tragic loss. And if you don't have people showing up for you in the way you need, then you also need to take care of yourself. And you probably won't want to do that, especially in the early stages, but you need to. You need to eventually take care of yourself and make room for your grief. So for me, I started doing things that made me feel like the old me to help me feel closer to myself, even though I knew there was realistically no way I was going back to the old me. But I was doing things that made me feel better. I also started going to the gym. That was really helpful. I started going like a couple months after, and it just helped me have a place to get my stress out, my anger out, my sadness out. I also made sure I had a creative outlet. And it's funny because the year that my brother died, like the first year, my creativity skyrocketed. And it's weird to say that, because people always say that you create out of pain. The best art is created out of a place from pain. And that is so true, because ever since my brother died, I just felt like I had all these emotions and all this pain, and I had to channel it into something. So I started making videos. I started taking more pictures. I started writing. I was doing so many things. I was talking and filming myself. And it was because I had all of these emotions and pain and everything. And I was channeling that to create art. And you look at some of the most beautiful art you see in the world, whether it's films, whether it's music, paintings, books, all of that, they're all created from pain and going through things. And I find that a lot of these people have created from a place of where they were truly just had so much pain in their heart. They just used that as an outlet. They channeled it into the art they created. So please channel your pain and your grief into art or something, anything, just do it. Another thing I did was journaling. So I was journaling about my own experience, and then I also started journaling to my brother. So I started like a little series with myself, but I haven't been keeping up with it. Like the first year, I was doing it every month or every few weeks. I was writing Dear Ryan, and I was just writing to him, and it was so therapeutic and helpful and healing in my grief journey. I would also take videos of myself talking, and like in a vlog style way, just on my phone, just talking about my experiences. I remember taking a video vlogging about my first Christmas without my brother, which was only a couple months after he passed away. And it's so crazy going back and just seeing different versions of myself throughout my grief journey and just how far I've come and how much I've healed since then. Something I realized is that you need to recognize that it's a grief journey, no destination of healing to reach, because this is going to be your life and it's a lifelong journey. So instead of consuming your life with grief, try to learn to live with it instead. And of course, the early stages are going to feel all-consuming and it takes over your entire life. But I promise you, eventually, you learn to live with it, you learn to grow with it, and it will always be a part of you. And you need to just accept it, because once you realize that grief is just love with nowhere to go, I love that saying, it's just love with nowhere to go, you just learn to express that love. You learn to express that grief, and you learn to live with it and grow with it instead of bottling it up. Shaming yourself for having grief, instead of letting it consume your life. You need to learn to live with it. And the fact that you've survived another day living with this pain, with this painful experience and this tragic loss and this grief, just shows how resilient you truly are. And at the end of the day, we only really truly have ourselves from the beginning until the end. That is the one thing you are guaranteed in life, is that you have yourself. So never stop showing up for yourself, and don't let yourself down. Be there for yourself, have patience with yourself, and keep showing up for yourself. And eventually you'll realize that you're not as lonely as you think. And I know this whole episode was about how grief is so goddamn lonely, but eventually you'll get to a point as well that you realize grief isn't as lonely as you thought, because you do have yourself. You do have God. You have the universe. You have your loved one watching you and with you every step of the way, protecting you. And that is what I've realized. And I know a lot of people feel different ways about God and the universe, but it's only been confirmed for me since my brother died. Like, my faith in the universe and just that everything will work out has only gotten even stronger, because my brother, he was such a force when he was physically here. And in the spiritual world, he is even more of a force. Like, it's crazy. Like, we get signs from him all the time. I just know he's around. I know he's protecting me. So that really helps too, is just knowing that I'm not alone. Like, I have him here with me. So once you open your eyes to that, and a lot of people are like, oh, I don't get signs from my loved one. I don't feel them. But you know the saying where they say you have to believe to see? It's true. People think that, oh, they need to see proof to believe, and it doesn't work like that. You need to open up your heart to the possibility that they are still with you, because they are. They are still with you. They're still trying to communicate with you. They're still trying to send you signs. They're still around. They're just existing in a way that you cannot see, on another level of consciousness, and you need to believe that they're there with you, and eventually you will see. They'll start showing you more signs because you're open to seeing them and believing that they're there with you. Anyways, this has been a really long episode, but I hope to God it's helped you in some way. This is such a heavy topic, but it also doesn't need to be. It needs to be something that we need to talk about more and have more conversations about. We all go through losses, whether you haven't gone through one or you already have. Chances are you know somebody that's gone through a loss, and you will go through a loss at some point in your life. So it's just important to know what other grievers feel like, just kind of the life that we live and how hard it is, and just how to show up for people and be there for people. And I wish I knew all of these things back then. Before my brother died, I wish I knew how these people that have gone through these tragic losses, I wish they knew how they felt back then. I wish I knew how to show up for them. Wish I knew the things I could have said, the things I could have done differently. I just wish I knew all of that before, because I have so many regrets in how I showed up or didn't show up for people, and I just think it's important to know. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. I really hope this resonated with you in some way and helped you in some way, and you can relate. If you need to talk to someone about your grief journey, if you're going through a grief journey, I'm always open to talking about our grief journeys together. You can always message me. I'm open to talking about it. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the I Don't Give a Care podcast, and I can't wait to see you guys next week. And on Wednesdays, we don't give a care. Bye!